My name is Diana Renaud. As I mentioned before, I'm the Grants and Fundraising Coordinator at SeyCCAT. It's a trust fund based in Seychelles, and we are the convening agent for the GFCR program. The name of our GFCR program is called Oceans Resolved. Yes. What I do, I oversee the implementation of the GFCR, the Oceans Resolved in Seychelles, mostly coordinating with stakeholders, such as government and NGOs. GFCR is not is part of my work, but I also do other projects. We have projects with the Blue Nature Alliance, and also, as one of my supervisors usually said, you have a portion of your TOR with fundraising. So, yay. Yes, what about you?
Sounds interesting. I am Thuhufa Abdulla, and I'm currently the project manager for the GFCR funded project in the Maldives. Our project is called Maldives Resilient Reef Ecosystem and Economy for the Future. Quite a mouthful, but short and sweet, we call it Maldives Reef Program. I joined just last year, end of last year, and trying to get implementation rolling. As the convening agent, UNDP has been working very closely with the government partners and trying to expand on the opportunities that we hope to implement within the program. So I think with Maldives and Seychelles, with some of the similarities being small islands, I think there's a lot of lessons learned and experiences we can share.
Yes. What are one of the solutions under your program?
So we are hoping to, as a first step maybe, but not in the phase 1, but going into phase 2, we are hoping to establish a blue economy lending window so that we create that opportunity and environment for businesses to scale up any initiatives that they have already ongoing or they want to introduce. So in phase 1, what we're going to be focusing more on is putting forth a grant. So we are opening up opportunities where local businesses can submit their proposals and we can provide them with the initial funding so that they can test out some of the solutions that they want to in the pilot areas we have identified. So yeah, that's a starting point for us, and then as we go along, of course, we want to expand and explore.
Yeah, we also have a similar kind of solution. We are planning to establish what we call the Business and Technology Innovation, BTI, in short form. Yeah, we also have to adopt the acronyms of big words. So the introduction of BTI, this is to help businesses go through, especially those that has really good, positive businesses, good ideas that they want to pilot. As SeyCCAT, because our main role is to provide grants to the local communities, they are able to use the funding from the grants that will be provided and de-risk their business idea. And once it has been de-risked, they will be able to go through the BTI, which will provide the support with mentorship program, access to markets, and other things. And once they have graduated through that BTI, they'll be able to access bigger loans for them to, especially if their business idea is really good and it's scalable. So
I think we have a lot of similarities in that sense in terms of where we are going to direct our activities. I would also like to understand a bit more on the current landscape of how active NGOs are in Seychelles, because I think there might be a difference with Maldives. Maybe once you share your experience, I can answer.
In Seychelles, NGOs, especially environment NGOs, are very active. But the way they're active is more towards, they prefer the normal grants mechanism in receiving grants for projects, for implementation. When we first started with the GFCR, introducing them with the GFCR concept, in the beginning, there was the grant component, everything was okay. But then when we also introduced the idea of blended finance, it's not the NGO's fault that they kind of reluctant to be part of the program. It's much to do with how the policy landscape is. If you're an NGO, you are not able to make a revenue. So it's kind of hard in Seychelles for NGOs to make profits from any businesses ideas that they could have. So,
certain limitations, right?
Yes.
I think it's very similar in the Maldives, but I think where we have the contrast is for us. In recent years, of course, we've had a lot of NGOs coming up that are more focused on conservation and environmental organizations. But as you have highlighted, even for us, it becomes a challenge when a lot of their activities are surrounding the grants accessibility, and once they have access to a grant, what happens oftentimes is that they start something up, and then on the sustainability perspective, once the grant funding is over or they've utilized all of it, they're not necessarily able to turn that initiative into a revenue generating operation.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we would need a lot of the technical assistance, a lot of the sort of input going into informing them how they can change their initiatives, innovative solutions to become a business that would also feed back into the conservation efforts. We've had conversations within the communities or concerns within the communities, especially in the initial stages, like a couple of years back, when we were initially establishing protected areas, declaring our priority sites, which is Addu and Formula, the southernmost atolls of the Maldives.
Okay.
So we have two very distinct communities, and then when we were going to establish the UNESCO biosphere reserves, and of course with protected areas, you have your zonations, no-take zones. So there were concerns, of course, from the communities that you are limiting our ability to gain economic benefits. But I think now is the time to shift that narrative in a way that we establish that there is a need for protected areas. There's a need for conserving the environment and natural assets, but that doesn't limit your ability to derive economic benefits from it. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had at a larger scale. And it is happening. People do have these conversations. It's coming up, but just bringing that paradigm shift from what we have been used to within the communities is what's difficult. And even, like you mentioned, the political landscape or policy landscape or the overall motivation within the communities, that's something we would need to understand better.
Yes. I would agree with you, especially coming from seeds. It's quite difficult because anyway, in Seychelles our population is quite small, and the economic of scale it's quite difficult also. So I guess in a way these are some of the factors that affects the decision making power of the government. So in our GFCR program, we also want to develop and trial out what we call the coral parametric insurance. I don't know if Maldives also.
Through our program, we supported our economist team based at the UNDP country office in undertaking a feasibility assessment to introduce coral reef insurance, for which we in fact had the validity workshop a week back. So it's still ongoing, but we've had some interesting observations reported by the consultants on their engagement with stakeholders and overall maybe challenges as well as opportunities for how we go forward with introducing the scheme in Maldives. But I think in terms of if we were to look at challenges, we do need that policy landscape. We need that regulatory frameworks and things to be set in a certain way and a process to be well defined for people to be more convinced, or organizations to be more convinced to sign up for this sort of very novel, at least in the context of Maldives, it's very new to go into something like this. But the good thing about this is because it's parametric insurance, I may not be an insurance expert, but from what I've learned, you're able to get out the payouts a lot faster because you have predetermined conditions that would trigger the payouts. But then there's also the challenge of how do we get people to sign up for this and to pay the premiums, and at which rate do we set the premiums?
Yes.
So a lot of questions to be answered, but it at least by conducting a feasibility study, we see the possibility and where we would need to inject more effort to address the existing gaps. How about in the Seychelles? How's the progress?
We are still also at initial stage. We haven't done the feasibility study yet, but it's also part of our activities, and also to do stakeholders engagement. Because, however, during our preparatory grant proposal, there was an appetite from NGOs to have this kind of scheme, because a lot of the environment NGOs, they do a lot of coral reef restoration, and especially with the coral bleaching, they don't want to see all their efforts going to waste, and especially it's grants money, so where are they going to get money again to kind of put back into the efforts that they make? So for us, there is possibility of an opportunity for this kind of scheme.
That's very interesting to know, because even in the Maldives, what's challenging is because coral reefs are maintained or managed and utilized differently all across the Maldives. So we're talking about around 189 residential islands and upwards of 150 plus tourist resorts. So for tourist resorts, they are incentivized to maintain a very pristine coral reef, because that's their main selling point. But for local communities, that there's some level of extraction. You have a more frequent interaction of people with the reefs. You have people taking up, let's say, for example, octopus is very well liked in the Maldives. So you have people extracting those, but collectively all across Maldives, it might not necessarily be that everyone is very conscious of how to sustainably extract marine, and how to interact with the marine environment as well. So it becomes challenging when we have these sort of different management approaches and the level of interaction with coral reefs, and how much it's difficult to anticipate what kind of damages would the coral reefs would be facing, because it depends case by case, island by island, community by community. But collectively, we can say, and we can observe from historical data as well as current trends, that there's an upward rise in temperature as well. So if we were to look at that as a parameter, that is something we can look at. But what about damage to the coral from human activities, development activities? We do have reclamation projects ongoing that, of course, opens up the corals and makes them more vulnerable to things like, sedimentation. So there are, situations where we would need to think a bit extensively and look forward into how we can better address those.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you are already thinking of those questions. We are still trying to figure out, try to ask ourselves other questions, like who's going to be the policy holder of how we're going to get the funds to put into for the payout of the premium. So yes. I'm glad you guys.
Even from a business perspective, although I may not be again an insurance expert or a business expert, I think we are taking the steps towards creating a better landscape in terms of regulatory frameworks and things. For example, the main authority that sort of governs or looks after the insurance work in the Maldives is the Maldives Monetary Authority. So there are ongoing works to introduce an insurance bill. So hopefully these sort of initiatives and activities in the upcoming years would then enable us to create that process, have everyone on board so that everyone is more confident. If there's a regulation tied or there's an act or law that governs how these things will work, people would feel, of course, more confident signing up for these type of schemes. At least that's what I believe. And the governance structure in country right now is that we do have the central government. So the environment management portfolio, very recently we've had the merger of two main ministries. So we have now, previously it was a tourism ministry and an environment ministry. We now have a Ministry of Tourism and Environment. So I'm hoping that this change would give us a bit of room to sort of push the activities that we have both on the conservation and tapping into that tourism operations. One of the key activities that we also have is to establish or support the establishment of other effective conservation measure protected areas, which is OECMs. So I am hoping that this new change would facilitate the process for us to push that forward. Okay. I was wondering if you have any OECMs within Seychelles as well?
For now, I cannot think on top of my head. We do have MPAs. KBA sites, we do have them. However, this, most of anything to do with KBAs, it's being implemented by another program, so I'm not too familiar with what you're asking me. In regards to the Blue Economy roadmap, I cannot pronounce myself on this, but in regards to the MSP of the Seychelles Marine Special Plan and SeyCCAT, both were created as the conditions of what we call the Seychelles debt for nature swaps, where the government owed a loan to the Paris Agreement, and then as part of the conditions or the repayment of the loan, the SeyCCAT was created, and also the protection of 30% of our exclusive economic zones were done. So, and out of the 30%, a lot of the MPAs for marine protected areas also falls on the which has been protected. So. And also, SeyCCAT itself, as a trust fund, is there to assist and support with the funding and finding resources for the implementation of the SMSP, the Seychelles Marine Special Plan.
That's very interesting to know, and I would be more interested as well to understand a bit on the governance structure of the Conservation Trust Fund, like who is able to access the funds, what are some of the criteria that you look into when you are, maybe approving who gets funding and for what exactly.
Okay, this is a whole lot of other presentation.
Okay, maybe too busy. Yeah.
Yes, but we can still you can still be in contact with us for more information about the establishment of SeyCCAT and with the works that we do. Because giving out grants is only part of our mandate. Initially, it was our main mandate, but now, with the growth and the changes in the environment and the financials failed, so we also had to adapt and had to evolve and adapt. Yeah.
It's very interesting because in Maldives also we do have some form of conservation funds already that exist. So even for the marine for the nature parks in Addo and Formula, there's a conservation trust fund that already exists. But there's also challenges surrounding the costs for operation and maintenance of both the nature parks, especially in Addu, because if we look at it in terms of area, Addu covers a bigger area. So it's around, off the top of my head, it's definitely above 700 hectares. So it's a lot of area. So they have also shared the concerns of how it gets very difficult, especially with the changes and frequent changes in climate and our weather patterns in Maldives. It's been very difficult to predict. So usually with Maldives, when we have two seasons, two monsoon seasons, we were able to anticipate when the heaviest rainfall would be. So in the past, very heavy rainfall would be around once every 5 years. But we've had very, very heavy rainfall. We're talking about 1 year's worth of rain in one day.
Yes.
Happening every single year for the past 3 or so years. So this means that there's more extensive damage, which means you would need more funding for operation and maintenance to make sure that there's enough upkeep so that there's no disruption in the services, overall disruption. But what we see is because of the damage and because of how frequent it is, and this has been a challenge for us with the program as well, because at the point where we had the approval and the funding and everything, we needed to, at that point, go back and see if the needs identified during the formulation of the program was what's actually the situation now. And in fact, there were additional needs and requirements, and of course that means funding to make sure that the services are upscaled. And that's one of the key activities in our program as well, to enhance the capabilities of the nature parks in both Addu and Formula. But as you can understand, with these frequent weather events, it gets a bit difficult even for us to keep up, sort of, let's say. But yeah, I'm wondering if it's the same in Seychelles with weather patterns. I'm assuming that weather would be similar.
Yes. So yes,
sure.
of course, it is similar, and it is probably one of the concerns of those entities managing the MPAs, such as the Seychelles Parks and Gardens Authorities, which currently manages 5 NPAs within the inner islands of Seychelles. And also we have other NGOs such as Nature Seychelles, who manages the Cousin Island Special Reserves. So yes, these are concerns that's applicable also to Seychelles. And also it doesn't help now, but I mean, not now, it's been a while. Seychelles is considered a high-income country, so getting funding from donors, especially through grants, it's kind of difficult for our NGOs. So one of the solutions sometimes is for them to tap through what we call the Blue Grants Fund, for them to access funds, for them to be able to implement some of their projects. But again, also our Blue Grants funds also needs replenishing, because the fund so far has only been from the Deaf Nature swap, the proceeds from the nature swaps, and then also from the blue bonds. 2 years ago, we also got around $500,000 from the Blue Nature Alliance. But again, the funding from the World Bank proceed has stopped. It's still in discussion for if there's going to be a phase 2, so cannot pronounce on this one because government and World Bank are still in discussion. So and the Blue Day Challenge, this was just a one-off, so we don't know. So yes, a lot of NGOs in Seychelles were looking up to SeyCCAT as a means of them as a source of funding, and we also owe our community, you know,
Yeah.
the helping hands, the funds. So we're also trying our best to find ways to tap into those mechanisms out there for us to get money. Yeah. So yeah, we do understand. But is Maldives considered high income?
We very recently got promoted to upper middle income. So I think we mirror a lot of the challenges that we have discussed here today.
Okay.
But although we are an upper middle income country, we do have the same sort of challenges in terms of development. And because we are so geographically scattered, it
doesn't help. Doesn't help.
And also, how do we then make sure that there's equitable
distribution,
disbursement, and distribution of resources, funding, everything?
Yeah, this is a big challenge and still a big question. So we will explore how we can do this.
Yes.